have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So a deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom we know in this wonderful land of ours. I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face and the effect that it has on every aspect of our lives. Not only that, what we can do about it. And I write about it in my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, my book for the Christian faith community, The Judas Syndrome, my book with Catherine Armistead, How Did We End Up Here, and soon to be released, The 10 Commandments of Character, How to Lead a Significant Life. So I write about it in my books, and I write about it in my weekly blog articles at www.counselingresource.com. That's counseling resource with 2 L's. And also my own personal blog, www.manipulative-people.com. That's manipulative-people.com. More than just a resource for dealing with manipulators. It's a resource for dealing with all kinds of disturbed characters, all the problem folks that you're likely to encounter in your life. And if you want to join the conversation tonight, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'm happy to take your call. We have a lot to talk about tonight, but I hope we can have a good discussion about the issues facing our time, especially if you're dealing with a problem character in your life. Maybe you're dealing with a problem relationship. Maybe you've been the victim of some kind of nefarious character or some manipulator. Maybe you just have a story you'd like to share that you think would be of interest. Maybe you have a comment or two that you think the listeners would like to hear regarding the problems that we face in our country right now with the character crisis that is affecting so many areas of our life, affecting our political debate, affecting our family life, affecting our community life, all aspects of our lives. So if you want to join the conversation, once again, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'm happy to take your call. Well, it's been an interesting week once again. I do want to say that this current series of articles that I have just really begun, the last 3 articles on the first commandment of character development. This is a prelude, a sneak preview, if we will, on my blog at manipulative-people.com, a sneak preview to my upcoming book with Catherine Armistead, tentatively titled The 10 Commandments of Character, How to Lead a Significant Life. It's a book that is based on years of research that I did, clinical case studies that I did, and I first wrote about in my book, Character Disturbance. It really delves into those life lessons that we have to not only teach our children, but we have to learn well. They are significant axioms that we have to heed if we're to develop decent character. And they're not only axioms that we must teach and our children must learn, but they're axioms that we have to pay close attention to and embrace if we've come to that point in our lives, or someone we know has come to that point in their life, where they're seriously appraising their general approach, reappraising their general approach to life, and have decided that some changes are in order. That maybe the way they're looking at things, or the way they have traditionally looked at things, thought about things, the attitudes they've had, the habits they've developed, their overall character that they have formed, really needs some modification, really needs some change. And these are the commandments that my clients have taught me over the years are the most necessary things to learn, to master. And I've been talking the past couple of weeks and writing about in the manipulative-people.com blog about the first commandment being recognizing that we're not really at the center of things, that we're not either at the center of the universe nor we are a universe to ourselves. We are a part of something much bigger, and recognizing that we are a part of something bigger, that we're not the center of things, and that we are not everything ourselves, that we're just a part of something. And because we are, we have to recognize that everything we do, every attitude we hold, every way of thinking that we embrace, and therefore every action that we take, or action we don't take, based on those beliefs and attitudes, they impact the world and everyone else. No person is an island. We necessarily impact other people by what we do and what we fail to do. And the beliefs and attitudes and ways of thinking that we embrace are a big predisposer of those ways of behaving. So, recognizing that everything we do has impact is really crucial. It's a crucial first step in forming our character. Now, is it enough? No, absolutely not. That's why there are some other axioms, and I'll be talking about those in the weeks to come in the articles on my blog. But that's what I've been blogging about, and perhaps if that's part of what you want to talk about tonight, or you have an example to share, or maybe you just want to ask a question about the article that is posted this past Friday, or the articles preceding it, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I have a couple of announcements to make also. One is that it will be just a week after next that I'll be in New York City area, on Long Island at 2 different locations, and in Midtown Manhattan for another location. And I am happy to say that advance registration for these workshops, which are primarily designed for mental health professionals and other professionals who are dealing with character-impaired people. I must say that the advance registration is very strong already. I couldn't be more pleased. If you are listening and you are a person who has to deal in a professional capacity, whether you're a therapist, a social worker, whether you're a mental health professional of any type, maybe you work in probation or parole, maybe you work in law enforcement, maybe you work within the justice system. If you're dealing with character-impaired people, you'll likely want to attend this workshop. And you can still register at the door. There's still time to go to the to go to the Cross Country Education website. That's Cross Country Education Seminars. Look under the live training under my name, Dr. George Simon. You'll find a list of my live seminars coming up, and click on the one that you think you might want to attend and register. You still have some time to advance register, but you can also register at the door. And I'm happy to say that we already have a pretty full house, but, I'm sure that we can make accommodations for others. I will have books to sell there. All my books will be available there, and so will all of my materials that I give to professionals to help them in their work with character-impaired people. So you won't want to miss it if you're in the area or close to the area. And just go. Either you can go also to find more details and to find details about other workshops coming up. You can go to the page on my blog at manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com. Click on the page that is titled, I think, Workshops, Seminars, and there you'll find the roster of events, upcoming events for the next couple of months. You'll find the locations and the dates and the times and the places, but you can also go to the Cross Country Education website. That's Cross Country Education for more details. Well, it's been an interesting week once again. A lot of people are mourning the passing of another rock legend, an innovator in music. But I was reading some sad things about this wonderful musician that we know as Prince. I was reading that he had taken ill a couple of weeks ago and went and got checked out and was told it was the flu. So at any rate, they gave him some instructions and some medications and sent him home. And then some days later, he ended up in the emergency room. And at that time, the diagnosis was too much Percocet, an overdose of Percocet, which is a pretty potent pain reliever. Now, I got to tell you, Percocet is not really a treatment for the flu. And it's hard for me to imagine that that was the regimen prescribed. And so, the toxicology results won't be in for a while. The autopsy has already been done. But there's silent damage, silent physical damage. It's always done when these medications are used and abused. And eventually, one's heart and lungs just can't take it anymore. And we've seen all too many people. We lose early. I see we've got a call coming in. Hello, and welcome to Character Matters.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. I was hoping to call in. I didn't know if it was too soon in the program.
Yes, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Did you have a story that you wanted to share or a question you wanted to ask?
I have a question. I've read all your books, and I am in the process of a divorce, 40-year marriage, and I know he will never understand. He will never see the way things are. My question is, how do I let go of trying to get him to see, to move on?
Oh, boy. Would you hang on? I am so glad you asked this question. This is something that I stress over and over again in my training workshops.
Yes.
I have some little rhyming phrases that I like to teach the attendees. One of them is, it's not that they're not aware enough.
Yeah.
It's that they don't care enough. And
right. And I can see that. And
it's not that they don't see, is that they disagree. So what we really mean when we're saying that we really want to get them to see things, what we really mean is we'd like them to embrace the benefits of what we know to be meaningful change that would actually open some doors and make life entirely different, better on so many dimensions. And we'd like them to embrace that fact, right?
Right, and also it hurts after 40 years to realize that he is not capable of doing anything he doesn't care, basically. And I don't understand that.
Yeah.
And I do realize that over many decades I have accommodated and I have played the part I needed to play for the piece. And then I reached a point where I couldn't do it anymore. And when I stopped doing that, everything fell apart.
For the audience's benefit, can you give maybe one example of how you enabled that lack of caring in things that you did over the years? When you look back at it, you say that you know that you enabled some of this lack of caring. If you can give one example of that, I'm sure that the listeners would appreciate that.
Okay, I've got a lot. I'm not sure which one.
Well, let's try and limit to one or two, okay?
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely come up with one. Definitely. And the divorce is almost final, but it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I just need to know how to let it go. I'm 60, and he's all I've known, and I've tried. But
and one of the things that you're facing right now, I talk about this a little bit in my book, In Sheep's Clothing. I talk about what I call the slot machine syndrome, which is, if you've played one of those one-armed bandits, you know that every now and then you feed the machine. You know, you put your quarters in, or you use your credits, or whatever the case may be, and
right, the slot machine effect. I read where you read about that.
yeah, and every now and then, you get some payoff, and that gives you hope. Every now and then, you get some little something back that tells you, well, maybe after all, it's worth your while to keep investing. Well, you do this over
Right.
and over again, and then before long, you've got a big chunk of change in there. You've got a huge investment, and if you just walk away, you leave everything there, and so you're tempted to take one more chance. And so, what
Right.
often happens after the end of so many years of investing, what makes it so difficult to walk away is the investment, your investment in that
My
relationship.
investment of my entire life since I was
Yes.
18.
Yes. Yes.
And I know it's over. I know there's no reconciliation. My problem is that I have spent my life with someone who I want him to be able to say, I understand I hurt you. I understand.
You don't think
But
he does?
instead-
You don't think he knows?
If he does, he's a good actor.
You see, it's so hard for us to think. It's so hard for us to imagine that they don't see and that they're not aware. It's so hard
Right.
for us to imagine that they really know these things already. But I would encourage you, if you ask the question, how do you let go? And what I'm going to suggest to you is really straightforward. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it's straightforward. You've got to make a commitment to invest in yourself. You've got to make the commitment to invest your time and your emotional energy and to focus your attention where you're not going to be disappointed, and that is in yourself. It's time to build a life. It's time to build a life for yourself. You will not disappoint. And here's where you really can get an added boost to that. For a while, you're going to struggle with some unfounded guilt as you build that life.
And I have done that.
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty much over that phase.
Yeah. So for a while, you're going to struggle with that. And what you need to do to overcome that is every time you take a step to build a better you, every time you take even the singlest step, the smallest step, make the smallest effort, you've got to kind of give yourself an internal affirmation. You've got to give yourself some internal reinforcement. Kind of like a parent would who's coaching a child to kind of face a new challenge in life, a challenge that maybe they don't feel prepared for, and they need some support and some guidance. That's what you have to do, and that makes the process of letting go and moving on so much easier.
Well, you had said earlier about giving an example. I can give a perfect example of,
Sure.
and it's just kind of across the board, but for decades, he did not want issues brought up. So I became very afraid to bring up issues because either I would get stonewalled in the silent treatment or I'd get anger. So I became conditioned to not bring up issues.
Were they issues usually of an interpersonal nature? In other words, where he had done something that was hurtful or something like that? Were they usually issues like that?
Yeah, issues that a normal married couple would have in a relationship, wanting to get, more connected or whatever, and he simply always had the walls up, and then he would get very angry. So it really kind of, and had been with him since I was 18, so I became, I kind of grew up with this.
Yeah, and yeah, let me interrupt for just 1 second, too.
Yeah.
You said another thing. You said he would always have the walls up. The old psychology has us believing that people would always do the healthier thing were it not for some defensiveness, some underlying fear that causes them to throw up a wall. This is sometimes true, but in our character disturbed age, it's increasingly not true. It's increasingly not true. So then you start scratching your head and you say to yourself, well, why else wouldn't the person want a deeper level of connection? And the answer to that is that they are not sufficiently grown in character to either desire it or nurture it.
They're not capable.
They're not capable.
And I do realize he's not capable, but my whole thing is I know it intellectually. I don't understand it.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things we're going to talk a little bit on the program today, because we had an excellent example of that in our crazy political debate again this past week, where we had Mr. Trump's campaign manager basically telling the public that he's going to be changing his act, so to speak, putting on a new face, being a new somebody, just basically changing his persona.
Right.
And so you scratch your head and say, well, then who are you really? Who are you at the core?
Well, I have a feeling he doesn't have a genuine core.
God forbid.
But anyway, Dr. Simon, you're incredible. You've been a lifesaver for me the last year and a half.
Well, thank you so much.
Your books have been wonderful.
Thank you so much, and please remember that axiom: invest your time and your energy in building a new you, and have that image in the back of your mind, like a loving parent would, as a child, say, is just entering early adulthood, is looking for that direction. Have that image in your mind of that gentle hand on your shoulder. Give yourself that affirmation for every single effort that you make to build, and it will pay off. I tell you, it will pay off in spades.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Take care.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that was a great call. That is a great call, because it emphasizes something that I stress so often at the workshops. There are so many misguided professionals who make the same mistake. I know a lot of my colleagues, they get frustrated. One of the ways that I got referred so many individuals in my career with character disturbances is because some of my colleagues would start pulling their hair out of their heads, frustrated dealing with these folks. They'd call me, or they'd send me an email or a note and say, I'm pulling the hair out of my head. I cannot get this person to see. Well, that's not the problem. We make that assumption because the old psychology taught everyone that most people are unconscious about the things that hang them up, that they're unaware, that really their fears and insecurities are buried deep inside of them and cause them to build walls and cause them to act in ways that are unhealthy. And this is why they do the things that they do. Well, sometimes that's true. Sometimes people really are, to some extent, what we call neurotic, which means that they've built up so many defenses that they don't really know what's really going on underneath. They're anxious and afraid, and they don't even know it anymore. Sometimes that's really true. And they build walls. And we then think, if only we can get through to them, if only we can get them to let down that guard, then we could reach them. And sometimes that's true. But in our day of rampant character disturbance, most of the time, that's not true. Most of the time, we're dealing with folks who have formed a character that is self-centered, ego-inflated, entitled, and not caring enough to cultivate a truly intimate relationship with another human being, and to keep a commitment, and to build on that commitment. As I said to the caller before, and she echoed, they're incapable of more because they don't have the character for more. Sometimes it takes many, many years to learn that. It's pretty sad. It's pretty sad. Now, can an individual change? Yes, they can. But I have to tell you, after adolescence, changing one's character, growing in one's character, is really difficult business. And it takes an awful lot of very specialized therapy. And when I say specialized, I mean a very different, radical kind of intervention. It's not like traditional psychotherapy, insight-oriented psychotherapy. This is what I'm going to be training professionals in when I go to the New York City area week after next. It's a whole different ballgame. As most people who have sought help have learned the hard way. Most people who are dealing with a character-impaired person in their life have at one point or another sought some help. Maybe you've got an example of this, and maybe you can give us a call if you want to share it at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Maybe you've had that experience. You've been to a therapist many times. Maybe the therapist even got bamboozled. Maybe the character-disturbed person you were in a relationship with had such good manipulation or impression management skills that they pulled the wool over the therapist's eyes. The therapist didn't get it. And you ended up the bad guy again. Or maybe you were dealing with one of those therapists who just assumes, based on the old models, that everybody has a role to play in the dysfunction, and therefore everybody's got equal work to do. And so maybe you got nowhere. I've had people call and complain about this time and time again. And one of the things I tell the attendees at my workshops is that they have to be willing to abandon all of their old, tired, worn out, inadequate, and basically wrong notions about what goes wrong with character-impaired people and how to intervene. It's such radically different therapy. And it's really difficult, even at that. But it's impossible. Treating character disturbance is impossible with traditional methods that were meant to treat the phenomenon we affectionately call neurosis. People who are hung up insecure, anxious, people who have are dealing with some sense of personal inadequacy, or they have trauma in their past that they haven't overcome, and it's wreaking some kind of havoc in their life. And so they have to kind of dig deep and get in touch with those fears and insecurities, get in touch with that trauma, and work it through in an atmosphere of unconditional positive regard and support. And maybe come to some insights about why they're so perturbed. Therapy for character impaired people is radically different, and I outline it in my book, Character Disturbance. I also outline it in my latest book with Kathy Armistead, How Did We End Up Here? The answer to that question, how did we end up here, for a lot of people, unfortunately, is that they tried and tried and tried and tried everything they knew, including going to therapists, many times more than one therapist, trying individual therapy for each couple, trying marital therapy, trying couples therapy, to no avail. To no avail. And only to experience many times what I call therapy-induced trauma, which means that the experience itself, the experience that's meant to be, but that someone goes into hoping will be somewhat rewarding and energizing and helpful, that experience ends up being even more frustrating, leads to deeper despair, makes the person who sought the help feel even worse. That's what I call therapy-induced trauma. I know a lot of people to whom this has happened. Maybe you're one of them. Maybe you just have something you want to ask me. Maybe you have a situation you'd like to share that you think that the folks would like to hear about. And if you do, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Well, I want to talk about the article that I wrote this past Friday and posted on my blog at manipulative-people.com. I want to let you know that I'll be moving on to the second commandment in the next series of articles. But this last article in the series on the first commandment of sound character development that I've been writing about, and it is a preview of the book that Kathy and I will be releasing, Kathy Armistead and I will be releasing, it looks like sometime this summer. I haven't spoken with Kathy in a bit. She's tied up with a new career opportunity, but if you're listening tonight, Kathy, I don't think we're going to be ready as early as I thought we were going to be ready with that book. I was hoping that the Ten Commandments of Character would be ready by the end of the spring, the start of the summer. It looks like it may be summertime before it is ready. But at any rate, I'm previewing it in the series of articles. And the last three articles have been on the first commandment, which is recognizing that we're not the center of the universe, that we have impact on everything and everyone else in the world, impact on others, the attitudes that we hold, the beliefs that we have, they influence the actions we take and the actions we fail to take. And all of those things have impact. What we do and what we fail to do affects others. It can't not. No person is an island. And the point I made in this last article, and this is a really important point, is that whereas some people are just really clueless about their impact, in other words, they're just not aware enough that they're part of something larger and that they impact the rest of creation no matter what they do. They just haven't learned that. They're ignorant, basically, of that larger reality. There are some folks like that. So they just need to basically grow in awareness and see the bigger picture. And that takes care of a lot of problems. However, there are some people who are very aware of their impact, but they don't care about the negative impact that they have because it's all about them. That egocentricity that we are all naturally born with, they've never outgrown. And in our age, in our culture, in our zeitgeist, our cultural atmosphere, our social atmosphere of our times, it's been this way for the last 30 or 40 years and getting worse all the time. In our me generation kind of focus, our age of entitlement, of egocentric focus, it's all about me. It reinforces the center of the universe kind of mindset. And it's a real obstacle to any kind of intimacy, any kind of real intimacy, any kind of real connection in relationships. How do you really have an I-thou relationship with anyone when it's all me, me, me? It's all what I want, what I think I need, what I feel I have to do, what I want at the moment, what I feel like doing right now. Damn the impact. I'll do what I think I need to do regardless of the impact, regardless of how it affects someone else, regardless even of how it affects the person I claim to love. That's the greater problem for some folks. It's not so much that they haven't gotten some awareness of their place in the world. As I say in the workshops, it's not so much that they're not aware. It's not that they're not aware enough, but that they don't care enough. And that, as I mentioned in the article, has to do with empathy. Now, we know that certain serious character disturbances, certain very serious character disturbances are on the rise. And we also know that at the root of some of these serious character disturbances is an inadequate degree of empathy, an inadequate capacity for empathy, and in some extreme cases, no capacity for empathy. And these days, we also have all these studies pointing to differences in the human brain that suggests that it may be just our wiring that makes us incapable of caring enough. Well, we always have a tendency, unfortunately, especially in our crazy time. Here's another area where character affects even our science. We've had a tendency for many years now to really overplay and overinterpret what we know. This is a character issue. I'll give you a perfect example. You know, we'll use a couple of narcissistic characters. If you're listening, I mean no offense, but I'm going to make some examples of two people who just really, in my mind, exemplify this kind of grandiosity, this overestimate of capability that comes with a certain degree of narcissism. Mr. Trump, I'm sure, is a pretty smart guy. But it's clear, it's very clear to even the average person that he doesn't know what he thinks he knows. Yet he's brash enough to overinterpret, to oversell his capabilities. And he wants you to trust that if you just give him the reins, he'll know just what to do, even though he can't cogently tell you what he's going to do. He asks you to trust him. Well, this same kind of narcissism goes on in our science. And we have these studies that tell us certain things, and then we overinterpret them. And we do have studies that show us that the brains of certain individuals work differently. But does that necessarily mean that from the get-go, people are born and wired differently and they can't possibly be different? It doesn't mean that at all, actually, because the brain is one of the most plastic organs ever devised. It may interest you to know that there are some people, some individuals with a rare condition who are actually born without certain structures in their brain. Individuals who, for example, are born without cerebellums, that part of the brain that is responsible largely for helping us move in a coordinated fashion. It's not completely responsible, but it plays a big role in our coordination. Well, some people just happen to be born without that structure. So does that mean they're doomed to be uncoordinated? No, what the brain does is it compensates for that. It builds other networks, and sometimes even builds other kinds of structures to adapt. The brain is one of the most adaptive organs, one of the most adaptive instruments ever created, ever devised. It's an amazing instrument. So, yes, we know that the brains of these individuals are different, but does that necessarily mean that they're born different from the get-go? That certain things can't be nurtured? That certain things can't be developed? No, it doesn't mean that at all. But this is the thinking. This is the overinterpretation of the science. But we do know that for a variety of reasons, all of which have not yet been discovered, we have more and more individuals who are simply lacking in their capacity to really care. And I've got to tell you that I think certain aspects of our culture play a big role in this. We're bombarded early on with messages about how important we are and how important what we want is. Some folks even fight against the notion. For example, there are individuals who are just rabid. Now, I'm not going to get on either side of the political debate about environmental impact. You know, we do live in a world where we have an impact on our environment. And we've done some pretty horrible things to the environment, and we've paid a price for it. But I'm not going to get on one side or the other of the big debate, like with climate and whatnot. I don't want to get into the politics of it. But my point is that there are some people who are simply adamantly opposed to even being concerned about our impact. They just want to be able to do what they want to do without interference and without concern. And so they're just rabidly against anyone or anything who wants to make them more conscientious, who wants to urge them to be more conscientious about the impact that they have. They don't want to be conscientious. They don't want to have to worry about certain things. It's not that they don't realize. It's not that they don't realize that there's this world out there and that they have an impact on it. It's they don't want to have to care about it. Leave it to somebody else. This is one of the things that is going on within our tremendous financial crisis. You know, we faced a huge crisis that almost brought down the economy because of the really no goodness on Wall Street, bad actors, really impaired characters, people with serious character disturbances, many of whom were probably psychopaths, sociopaths, and they nearly brought down the country. But we have another crisis, and that is that we have these mounting debts that are so oppressive that soon we won't be able to do anything but pay the interest on our debt. Risking collapse. And it's not that people aren't aware. It's not that people in our government responsible for doing these things aren't aware. They're aware. They don't care. They keep kicking the can down the road. I know you've heard that line, kicking the can down the road. Let some future generation worry about it. Well, that future generation will very soon be us. We are almost out of time, and we are certainly almost out of money. The character issue affects every aspect of our lives, and we've been ignoring it for so long. And it's time we started to pay attention to it again. You know, we're entering what I call the patriotic season very soon, starting with Memorial Day, going through Flag Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, and Veterans Day. And that's typically the time period where I get requests for the song that will close our show tonight and that opens the show. My wife and I wrote it at the turn of the new millennium because we wanted to inspire people. We wanted to inspire people to take this whole issue seriously about what makes us great as a society. It's not our economic power, our economic clout, or our military might. A lot of people think that it's not that, it's never been that. What makes this country great in the times that it has truly been great is the character of its people. We have plenty of times that we should rightfully be ashamed of because we, as people, did some horrible things reflective of a really seriously impaired character. And it brought us down when we did. There have been times when we've been way too greedy. There have been times when we had such horrible disregard for certain groups of people that we abused and oppressed them. So there have been plenty of times that we could rightfully be ashamed of, but we've also had times when we lived out the principles of our creed. Times when we really embraced those principles, honored them, lived them out. And it ushered in a time of great prosperity and greatness. So we've always been the key to that. Character has always been the key to that. So my wife and I, we wanted to inspire people to kind of get it on that level. And so that's the song you hear that opens the show and closes the show. And this is the time of year when I hope to hear from more people who want to join the chorus of performers that help to carry the message, that that's where our greatness really lies. You give people who have a solid moral compass, who knows what it takes to build a solid, decent relationship, to nurture a good family, to be a part of a solid community. Those people build great societies. And you give those kinds of people maximum freedom. Freedom to prosper without interference. And they go on to do great things. They innovate. They build things. They fashion new enterprises and create opportunities for everyone. That's the message. But we're not solid in character. When we lose our moral compass, everything starts to crumble. And that's what's been going on, unfortunately, for too many years now. Our character-fostering institutions have become infected. And we've suffered as a result. We're not as great as we were. Matter of fact, we're not very great at all anymore. And we've got to turn that around. And we can turn it around if we start focusing where we need to focus. So as the theme song plays, let's keep that in mind. We'll be great as a country when we're great in character. And toward that end, I invite you to visit my blog at manipulative-people.com. Avail yourself of my books and tune in again next week for another edition of Character Matters. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Dr. George Simon. I'll see you again next week on another edition of Character Matters. Take care, everyone.